Chapter 2571, Imperial Arm. Chapter 2571, Imperial Arm. Below the starry sky, a figure dressed in white sat in a cross-legged stance. In the boundless universe, he appeared especially tiny. His eyes were shut tight, and his spiritual soul had merged into one with the starry sky. He had forgotten about himself. This was Futian's true self, but his consciousness was not inside of his true form. Above the celestial skies, the enormous phantasm appeared in the vast starry space. It looked like the projection of Futian in the starry skies. This was a manifestation of his consciousness. The eyes of the projection looked toward the divine prefecture cultivators, who came to attack. He stood before the powerful cultivators of the divine prefecture alone on his own. He intercepted them outside of the Ziwei segmentum. The divine prefecture cultivators paused in their tracks. The aura from each of the camps was extremely terrifying. Their gazes were fixed on the phantom figure before them. Indeed, as the rumors had it, Futian could utilize the will of Ziwei the Great to fuse his spiritual soul into the starry skies and control the trillions of celestial stars. At this moment, Futian represented the will of Ziwei the Great and guarded this place. In the middle of the various divine prefecture factions were the cultivators from Tianyan City, of which the leading figure wasn't the lord of the Tianyan City, and it was his heir Wang Xiao, who had been defeated by Futian. The divine prefecture crusade this time was led by Wang Xiao for an assault on the Ziwei segmentum. Wang Xiao looked in front of him as well, and he stared at Futian's phantom figure. His gaze was ice-cold, while murderous intent burned inside his eyes. "Young city lord, please break open this defense of the Ziwei segmentum. As long as we shatter the will of Ziwei the Great, we can directly charge into Ziwei and wipe out the Imperial Palace," the chief of the West Sea Domain Chief's manor said. He had an intense hatred for Futian. Futian killed a significant number of people from his West Sea Domain Chief's manor. Although he was the chief of the Domain Chief's manor, under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Palace, he joined this war against the Ziwei segmentum. The various cultivators all looked toward Wang Xiao, the only one capable of breaking through this defense and destroying the will of Ziwei the Great was Wang Xiao. Although the lord of the Tianyan City was arrogant to say that Wang Xiao was invisible amongst cultivators below the great emperor, in some sense he was right. With the imperial arm, very few people in the divine prefecture could hold their own against Wang Xiao. His own power level was, of course, out of the question since he had been defeated by Futian not long ago. "All right." Wang Xiao nodded and walked forward. It stepped on the void and stood in the middle of the boundless starry skies. With a turn of his mind, a ray of light appeared above him in the vast starry skies. As the light rained downward, it illuminated the vast space. That was the imperial glory, supremely divine and holy, and even the apex overlords didn't dare to look into it directly. Wang Xiao went up into the air and moved in that direction. He stood in the boundless starry skies. Before him was a divine hammer. The one who was holding the divine hammer was a supreme, holy phantasm. The phantasm was extremely oppressive and had an unparalleled aura of might and majesty. It was almost as though it contained vitality and looked down upon all beings in the world. Tianyan the Great. The hearts of the cultivators quivered. This divine hammer was one of the imperial arms forged personally by Tianyan the Great. It was the divine attacking arm of Tianyan the Great, a divine weapon known as the Sky Tremor. This was the imperial arm that Tianyan the Great explicitly forged to be compatible with the divine technique, Sky Tremoring Hammer, which he had created. In the boundless void, waves of tremoring pulses swept out from above the Sky Tremor. The cultivators from the divine prefecture all felt a suffocating aura. The waves of terrifying tremors continued to expand while growing stronger. It covered a nearly endless area, perhaps even the entire Ziwei segmentum. Boom! Dull thumps could be heard in the skies, as waves after waves of the tremoring pulses swept across the air and landed on the light screen outside the Ziwei segmentum. Rigorous booming sounds erupted from the impact. Moreover, it was as though those tremoring pulses were endless, impacting the light screen over and over. Retreat! The divine prefecture cultivators flew into the air and went even higher to evade those tremoring pulses. They looked down toward the segmentum. The tremoring pulses of the sky tremor seemed to transform into tangible attacks. As it tremored down on the light screen one round after another, it was as though it had no end. Legend has it that every attack of the sky tremor contained hundreds of millions of tremoring pulses, containing enough power to obliterate anything in this world. A powerful cultivator from the divine prefecture said as he looked in Wang Zhao's direction. It was as though Wang Zhao's body had fused into one with the phantasm of Tianyan the Great. When he reached out his hand, he gripped onto the sky tremor together with the arm of the phantasm. Yi Futian's phantasm naturally felt this overwhelming pressure as well. With a turn of his mind, the celestial stars in the skies outside of the Ziwei segmentum started to revolve and rotate. It was as if the entire segmentum transformed into one complete star, with trillions of stars merging into one to protect the Ziwei segmentum from obliteration. As the divine light rained down from the celestial skies, it blinded the eyes of those who looked toward it. Wang Xiao raised his hand. The phantasm of Tianyan the Great raised the sky tremor and slammed it down. At this instant, trillions of tremoring pulses swept downward, shrouding the vast celestial skies. Within the vicinity of these tremoring pulses, it was as though no living being could exist. Regardless of who stood below, he would be shattered and killed by the tremoring pulses. Boom! A dull, heavy thud echoed through the celestial skies. It was as though space itself was being crushed and shattered, giving rise to an endless array of dark cracks in space. At the same time, the waves of tremoring pulses attacked against the outside of the body of the star. The tremoring even seeped in indirectly, trying to shatter the entire Ziwei segmentum. At this moment, inside one of the cultivation stars inside the Ziwei segmentum, all of the cultivators suddenly heard the terrifying noises coming from atop the celestial skies. It rumbled their eardrums, causing the ground to shake and tremor, as though there was an earthquake. Buildings collapsed while the wild roars of the demonic beasts could be heard. At this moment, every single person inside the Ziwei segmentum felt this tremoring pulse attack coming from outside of the segmentum. Regardless of cultivation level, a shocked expression spread across all of their faces. They raised their heads to look toward the sky while the ground was quaking. What in the world is happening? No one knew. Only the people of the Ziwei Imperial Palace knew what happened. At this moment, the Imperial Palace was tremoring as well. They raised their heads to look toward the outer skies, and waves of shock went through their hearts. It was such a terrifying attack that impacted the entire segmentum. Just how frighteningly powerful was it? If it weren't for Yi Futian with the will of Ziwei the Great controlling the celestial stars, these tremors would be able to obliterate countless lives from the Ziwei segmentum. This is the attacking power of an imperial arm? The hearts of the cultivators quivered, being able to cover the entire segmentum. That was such shocking power. Just how terrifyingly powerful could the great emperors be? In the eyes of a great emperor, all cultivators below the great emperor level were likely no different from ants. Regardless of how powerful a tribulation-playing cultivator was, there was no way he could even conceive an attack this terrifyingly powerful. And Yi Futian, what kind of pressure was he under now? Boom! Another sky-shaking noise echoed through the air. People in the entire segment could hear this extremely horrifying noise. Outside of the Ziwei segmentum, and outside of the tremoring pulses from the attacks of the sky tremor, a ray of divine light shot down from the sky tremor, colliding in one direction, to form a terrifying pillar of light, attempting to pierce through the defense. Around the light pillar were ominous cracks in space, even tearing open tunnels connecting to the original realm and the divine prefecture. On the other end of the space cracks, divine prefecture cultivators sensed the situation and were all equally shocked, not knowing what was happening. He didn't break through. The divine prefecture cultivators saw that below them, the Ziwei segmentum defensive light screen was not broken under the attack of the imperial arm. However, cracks appeared on the flowing starry light screen, and they were expanding. The truly terrifying thing was that the tremoring pulses still hadn't dissipated. It was as though there was no limit of end to them. Finally, as the cracks spread through the light screen, the outer starry light screen was torn apart, and as the cracks continued to grow, the defensive light screen was also breaking. Futian witnessed all of this happening. He looked toward Wang Xiao and the sky tremor above him. The power of an imperial arm, as expected. It was truly as terrifying as it could get. But it wasn't unmatchable. With a turn of his mind, the divine lights from the stars of the celestial skies converged together. The phantasm of Ziwei the Great manifested behind Futian's figure, and then it fused together with his apparition. Futian raised his head and looked toward the phantasms of Wang Xiao and Tianyan the Great high up in the skies. This was no longer a battle between Wang Xiao and him. It was a battle between the wills of two great emperors. The sky tremor was once again raised, then slammed down. Trillions of tremoring pulses swept out, attempting to shatter the entire Ziwei. In the ancient era, Ziwei the Great was the apex great emperor. His power should be above that of Tianyan the Great. However, the imperial arm left by Tianyan the Great contained the attacking will of Tianyan the Great himself, while the Ziwei segmentum did not. Instead, it required Futian's control. A starry divine light erupted to transform into a starry divine sword, colliding directly with the light ray from the sky tremor that was slamming down. High up above the sky, two light pillars of golden and purple colors appeared, tearing apart the space around them. It was as though the entire world was collapsing. It was extremely terrifying. At the same time, the stars of the celestial skies revolved, and once again blocked those terrifying tremoring pulses. But when the trillions of tremoring pulses swept downwards, many stars exploded and were shattered, allowing the terrifying tremoring pulses to invade the Ziwei segmentum. Futian could sense that inside the Ziwei segmentum, countless living beings were affected. Many people were even injured due to these terrifying tremoring pulses. Ancient great emperors were able to obliterate an entire world on their own. That was certainly not fiction. Futian raised his head and looked in the direction which Wang Xiao was in. The attacks of the imperial arm were so powerful. He couldn't just allow him to strike over and over again. Otherwise, even if he managed to fend against his attacks, the cultivators of the Ziwei segmentum wouldn't be able to bear it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2572, Confrontation. Chapter 2572. Confrontation. The overlords of the divine prefecture stood atop the skies, separating into different formations. Just then, the lord of the Tianyan city lowered his head to look below him and said, "The star defense light screen had already been broken through. We can charge in and enter the Ziwei segmentum, dismantling the enemy from inside, and leave the straight-on attack for Wang Xiao." Although their power wasn't as terrifying as Wang Xiao with the imperial arm, many of them were still apex cultivators who had overcome the second divine tribulation of the Great Path. Even across the entire divine prefecture, they're still considered top-tier cultivators. Even on such a terrifying battlefield, they were qualified to participate. All right. Several of them nodded. Then the top forces of the divine prefecture went downward. The divine lights of the Great Paths circled them, transforming into rays of light and bolting down. They went straight for the inside of the shattered starlight screen, attempting to charge straight into the Ziwei segmentum. Yet just as they charged downward and were about to enter between the countless stars and into the Ziwei segmentum, a face appeared atop every single celestial star surrounding the segmentum. They were all Futian's face. At this moment, it was as though countless faces were staring at them, which evoked an uncanny feeling in them. As the starlight flowed and spun, the celestial stars revolved in a specific orbit, slamming toward them in the revolution. Immediately, terrifying noises were emitted, and all of them felt a suffocating divine might. "Careful!" the lord of the Tianyan city yelled. All of the cultivators unleashed the most powerful might of their great paths. Then the celestial stars collided with them. The Tianyan city lord dealt one thrust of his spear, striking onto the huge star, causing cracks to appear before it shattered. At the same time, the other cultivators also launched their attacks against the stars and caused them to shatter one after another. But it was as though they had sunken into a dominion of stars and were engulfed by the revolving stars of the skies. Countless stars smashed down onto them endlessly. One after another, each attack forced them into passive defense. The Tianyan city lord frowned. This was still just a slither of Yi Futian's consciousness dealing with them. Yi Futian's main consciousness was fending against Wang Xiao. But even then, it was still so astonishingly powerful, which was a testament to his powerful control over the stars of these skies. The entire Ziwei segmentum was under his control. Just like the rumors said, Yi Futian was the king of Ziwei. Here he was God. Wang Xiao saw this too. He wielded the sky tremor and slammed toward there. The tremoring pulses swept out, causing enormous noises to echo the skies. Many of the stars were crushed and obliterated, which finally allowed the cultivators to dash out. But they didn't dare to continue going deeper. Instead, they returned to the celestial skies. The auras of the Tianyan city lord and the other cultivators fluctuated, and the auras of their great paths were also unstable. Although it was just a short while just now, it was extremely dangerous. And that tremoring pulse just now impacted them as well. If they weren't tribulation-playing cultivators, and were instead just renhuangs, these tremoring pulses alone would be enough to kill them. However, the thought of charging into the Ziwei segmentum was extinguished. It seemed to be extremely difficult. Unless Wang Xiao completely tore open the defense, they wouldn't be able to enter. Wang Xiao, it's all yours, the Tianyan city lord roared to Wang Xiao. Wang Xiao was invincible below the great emperor level. This battle belonged to him. As long as he could crack open Ziwei and eliminate Yi Futian. So what if Tianyan city lost? No one cared about the process. They would only see the outcome. Okay. Wang Xiao nodded. At this moment, it was as though the great emperor had descended upon the world. It was as if he was the real Tianyan the Great, wielding the sky tremor and looking down on the Ziwei segmentum. The only acceptable outcome for him is victory. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to wipe out the humiliation of Tianyan city. One after another, wave of terrifying pulses came sweeping down the sky tremor. Deep thumping sounds echoed out continuously. One pulse after another, endlessly tremoring onto the Ziwei segmentum. Wang Xiao stared at Yi Futian's apparition and said, "This battle between you and me is a clash of fate. I answered to the will of Tianyan the Great, and gained the approval of the great emperor. I was granted the imperial arm. Today here, I will wipe out Ziwei." His voice rumbled through the boundless celestial skies, and echoed through the vast world. Yet a cold humph could be heard as though containing some disdain and contempt. Then Yi Futian said, "Does this power of the imperial arm belong to you? You're simply relying on the acknowledgement of the imperial arm. Even the attacks belong to the imperial arm and not you. Without the imperial arm, who are you? Just one spear thrust. How dare you claim to be invincible below the great emperors? Who are you to proclaim a clash of fate? All of your glory was bestowed by the lord of the Tianyan city, a person who can't even bear one thrust of a spear. Do you think you have unparalleled talent?" Yi Futian's voice echoed through the celestial skies, which made Wang Xiao's face turn ugly. He was always groomed as the heir of Tianyan city. Just as Yi Futian said, all of his values were imbued in him by his grandfather, the lord of Tianyan city. He was born extraordinary, destined for greatness. This had reached the peak after receiving the inheritance of Tianyan the Great. It wasn't just his grandfather. Everyone thought so too, even himself. The path that he was going to walk was the path of a great emperor. "He wants to affect your state of mind," the Tianyan city lord said loudly. "Wang Xiao, the world only sees results, not process. You've inherited the imperial arm, and now you're unparalleled below the great emperor. With this battle, you'll trample Ziwei, and then obliterate Yi Futian. Then, you will be number one in this world below the great emperors." Yi Futian sneered inside. The Tianyan city lord had always imbued this concept into him. Wang Xiao, the greatest below the great emperors. In fact, Wang Xiao had been under that perception all along, and it had never wavered. Until that thrust of a spear at the Tianyan city lord's office. That was when he wavered. That strike made him feel defeated. It made him see someone that was more outstanding than him. When reality is presented right in front of him, how could he not become doubtful? But now, He needed to forget all of this and put away the doubts toward himself. To walk the path of the great emperor, one must be willing to move forward no matter what. Wang Zhao's gaze suddenly became incredibly firm. He looked down toward Yi Futian's phantasm and said, "Anyone who stands before me shall perish." As his voice sounded, the sky tremor once again slammed down. Tremoring pulses of obliteration swept across everything. It was almost as though this entire space of the original realm would be destroyed as a dark hurricane formed. At the same time, the light pillar pierced through the boundless celestial skies and shot toward Yi Futian. It was unstoppable. As the divine lights of the celestial stars flowed and turned, the projection of Ziwei the Great manifested. Infinite starlight merged in a sword, a killing sword that contained the aura of the great emperor. It collided with the light pillar and once again intercepted it. Wang Zhao's attack couldn't penetrate it one bit to impact the Ziwei segmentum. "As long as I'm here, Ziwei will be too." Yi Futian's voice sounded unassailable. But he too was pondering. Although he could fend off Wang Zhao's attacks, it wouldn't work if he had to keep doing that. I needed some other way to threaten him to stop. He fused into the will of Ziwei the Great to control the Ziwei segmentum. He commanded the power of the stars of the skies, and that was the path of Ziwei the Great. However, that power wasn't entirely his. As he thought about this, the revolving stars of the skies in the boundless celestial space erupted even more magnificent divine lights. Yi Futian's face appeared atop all of the stars, and it was as though his consciousness had completely fused into the celestial stars. Hum hum, hum. Rays of starlight lit up and shone. The celestial stars all started to deal out terrifying sword wills of the stars at the same time. These sword wills contained the unparalleled might of the great emperor. It was almost as if they were the sword wills of the great emperor himself. As the celestial stars revolved, an endless array of divine swords appeared in different positions, but they all pointed in the same direction. That was where Wang Xiao was. Wang Xiao frowned. What was Yi Futian trying to do? His spiritual soul was fused into the boundless celestial skies in a decentralized state. Yet now, he wanted to perfectly control the orbits of the celestial stars. This would cause a significant burden on this spiritual soul and cause his powers to be scattered and unfocused. Yi Futian seemed to want to gamble with him. Under the celestial skies, a white-haired figure sat in a cross-legged stance. His eyes were shut tight as the starlight of trillions of stars spilled onto him, as though connecting with his body. At this moment, it was almost as though Yi Futian no longer belonged to himself. Inside his mind, he was no longer himself as an individual. Instead, he was the world of the stars of the celestial skies. Wang Xiao wielded the sky tremor and continued to sweep across the area using the tremoring pulses. Yet, when the pulses landed on the celestial stars of the skies, it was completely dissolved. It was as though the pulses were pierced through by countless divine swords and could no longer continue invading below the skies. The celestial skies sank into an eerie silence. Wang Xiao didn't continue attacking. Yi Futian didn't continue attacking either. This strike could break through the barrier of the segmentum and enter the inside of the Ziwei segmentum. The light pillar of the sky tremor will pierce through the entire Ziwei segmentum, and countless cultivators will lose their lives as a result. And all of this will be your fault, Wang Xiao thundered. Yi Futian's apparition disappeared. Ziwei the Greats will seem to have fused into the boundless celestial skies as well, and no longer existed in any particular location. So, no power could block the bolting light pillar of the sky tremor, and it would pierce through the Ziwei segmentum directly. It could even pierce through the land of the stars inside the segmentum, where the cultivators resided. After this strike, perhaps, you will die alongside them, Yi Futian replied. His voice was ice cold. It was as though he would do it no matter what, even at the expense of countless lives. At this point, he had no choice. He had to sacrifice. If all he did was brace and block, it could only lead to obliteration. When that happened, it would all be out of his control. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2573, Internal Conflicts. Chapter 2573, Internal conflicts in the silence of the starry battlefield. Wang Xiao hesitated. He looked at the divine starry light of the heavens and saw that every one of those lights was pointing at him. Every starry divine light contained incomparable sword will. It was as if as soon as he attacked, these swords in the heavens would converge upon him at the same time. The shockwaves from the sky tremoring hammer swept down again and again, but when each shockwave landed in front of the starry swords, it was neutralized by the sword will. It seemed that even with the imperial arms, it was not an easy task to invade Ziwei Segmentum. Wang Xiao thought of the words spoken by the city lord of Tianyan. With the imperial arms in hand, he was the unraveled. As such, how could he even contemplate retreat? If he couldn't manage to get inside Ziwei today and slaughter Yi Futian, that compounded with the defeat suffered at the city lord's office, he would no longer have the audacity to call himself the unraveled. He would be forever cowering in the shadow of Yi Futian. When he thought of this, Wang Xiao raised his arm, bathing in imperial glory. As if he had made a decision, he held the sky tremoring hammer high above his head, looking down at the stars in the heavens below. He spoke loudly. Under the great emperor, I am invincible. The moment his voice fell, the divine light descended from the sky, piercing the boundless space. The shockwaves of destruction swept out, and its intensity had multiplied with the help of the imperial arms. Billions of shockwaves descended at the same time with an explosive force. The beam of light went directly towards the space below, attempting to penetrate the Ziwei Segmentum. Above the stars in the heavens, Yi Futian's phantoms were lit up at the same time. It was as if he had transformed everything. Infinite starlight bloomed at the same time, transformed into the starry divine swords. There was also a terrifying spatial divine light that appeared, ignoring space and distance. The starry divine swords in the heavens pointed to one direction alone, Wang Xiao's direction. At this moment, the endless starry sky was illuminated, blinding everyone. At the same time, there was an ultimate destructive power that was lurking. At the periphery of the Ziwei Segmentum, the beam of light directly pierced the light screen of the segmentum. The ruinous beam of light penetrated heaven and earth, tearing through the space, making its way down into Ziwei Segmentum. At this moment in Ziwei Segmentum, on different starry continents, many cultivators had seen the pillar of light. This pillar of destruction was like a pillar from the gods, illuminating the world, carrying with it the power that could destroy the world. Wherever the light went, everything was gone like smoke and dust, and no one could stop it. When the cultivators in Ziwei Segmentum saw the scene in front of them, they were greatly shocked. What is happening? The hearts of so many trembled. An earthquake had occurred on the starry continent where they were located. Now, a pillar of apocalyptic light appeared and penetrated the heavens. Wherever the light passed through, all living beings were destroyed indiscriminately. It's the end. Some, when they saw the sight in front of them, felt a little hopeless and silently prayed that this beam of light that had pierced the segmentum would not pass through the starry continent where they were. Within Ziwei Segmentum, the cultivators on one of the continents seemed to be right under this beam of light. In an instant, they felt the aura of desperation. Many of them even wept as if they had seen the end of days. When such a beam of light fell, they would not have the slightest chance of survival. Before they had time to think too much, the beam of light descended upon them, but they were not destroyed. Because of the way the spaces were staggered, it looked as if the beam of light was coming towards them, but there was still a certain distance between the two. The beam of light landed quite far away from the continent where they were. Nonetheless, the aftershocks of destruction swept towards them, causing the continent to vibrate violently. Near the edge of the continent, many people perished in those spatial cracks. But even more people's lives were saved, fortunately. Who was it that launched this devastating attack? Cultivators on the continent looked at that ruinous beam of light passing by from a distance. The space had collapsed, unable to block the incomparable light. Everyone trembled in their hearts. Even those powerful cultivators shook in their boots, weak in their knees. This was more than just fear. How much damage would be caused by this beam of light? At the same time, outside of the Ziwei Segmentum, there was a terrifying scene being played out as well. When that beam of light slammed into Ziwei Segmentum, The light of countless divine swords directly swept toward Wang Xiao. The starry divine swords ignored the distance between them and seemed to be released by Yi Futian to rush through that terrible shockwave. It descended in just an instant and did not allow Wang Xiao to attack with the sky-tremoring hammer. Wang Xiao, the city lord of Tianyan, and many other cultivators were repelled by the sword light and appeared in different directions. He looked at where Wang Xiao was and shouted, only to see countless horrific black fissures had appeared in that area, along with an infinite destructive sword will. The eyes of the city lord of Tianyan glued on that side, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. An attack of such intensity, even with the help of the imperial arms, would not be easy for Wang Xiao. Upon the dissipation of this destructive attack, Wang Xiao appeared, and the imperial glory that he was bathed in before had dimmed considerably. The imperial arms held in his hands seemed a little unsteady, and there was blood all over his body, as if he had been injured severely. In a quick glance, he looked like a recognizable man covered in blood. Moreover, Wang Xiao's breath was very shallow, as if he had suffered a serious injury. If it weren't for the imperial arms, that blow would have killed him long ago, and it would have been impossible for him to block it. Wang Xiao glanced down at the space below. He couldn't see Yi Futian anywhere, as Yi Futian's actual physical presence was not here. Wang Xiao had no way to attack any specific target, because Yi Futian seemed to have immersed himself into the galaxy in the heavens, and there were countless phantoms of Yi Futian. Wang Xiao was pretty certain that such attacks by Yi Futian must have cost him a lot, as it had to impose a tremendous physical load on him. But Wang Xiao could not be sure of Yi Futian's actual condition. On the contrary, he was in a place of visibility while Yi Futian, as the master of the Ziwei segmentum, was in the shadows. "Do you want to continue?" said an icy voice, containing an unmistakable murderous intent. Many stars had already shattered and collapsed, but of all the rest of the stars that remained, there were still countless phantoms of Yi Futian that were above them, as if he was everywhere, and he could unleash another attack just like the one before. As long as Wang Xiao was bold enough to continue attacking Ziwei segmentum, he would blast out another devastating blow again. Wang Xiao had a terrible look on his face. Was he unable to achieve his objective after all? He was not sure if the whole things were to repeat itself again, that he would be able to block the attack. A repetition of the same attack was likely to kill him here and now. "You are the unraveled under the great emperor?" Yi Futian's voice spread across the endless starry sky as he said, "If so, let us do it again here so I can really see what exactly the unraveled is." His voice was filled with a potent murderous intent. Wang Zhao's attack had penetrated the segmentum, and many cultivators lost their lives under that one attack. Princess Donghuang had specifically told Wang Xiao not to kill indiscriminately. However, Wang Xiao failed to follow this command. To make his way into the Ziwei segmentum, he had killed many innocent cultivators in the Ziwei segmentum. "If you can't sack Ziwei today, I will most definitely destroy Tianyan City one day." A voice full of murderous intent resounded through the void, as if provoking Wang Xiao to make his move. The cultivators of various major camps from the Divine Prefecture stood in different directions, their eyes fixed on the stars in the heavens, looking humiliated. If Ziwei could not be defeated today, they would face certain danger in the future, especially those forces that did not belong to any of the ancient god clan. This kind of danger may descend upon them at any time, and unlike the ancient god clans, they wouldn't be able to stop the ambush from Ziwei Imperial Palace. Wang Xiao was hesitating, and he struggled in his heart. It was true that Yi Futian was provoking him to take action, but did he want to continue? How long could either one of them sustain this kind of exchange, whether it be Yi Futian or Ziwei segmentum? "If we don't destroy Ziwei today, there will be no more chance in the future." A cultivator from the Divine Prefecture was heard speaking. "City Lord, make a decision right now, and we will ensure Wang Zhao's safety." They came with the City Lord of Tianyan this time, and brought imperial arms with them, intending to flatten Ziwei. If they return without success, a sharp sword would forever hang above all of their heads. Of course, they didn't think they should withdraw. However, the City Lord of Tianyan did not think like them. This was Wang Xiao they were talking about. He was the most powerful genius talent of the Wang family in Tianyan City, the only one who could communicate with the imperial arms. If something were to happen to Wang Xiao, what would their future be? He had such high hopes for Wang Xiao. Yi Futian and his antics did not mean that Wang Xiao was weak or incapable. City Lord, if he's allowed to continue today, he will threaten all of the divine prefecture in the future. City Lord, we have allied to come here, and today we must sack Ziwei, or else it would all be for naught. We will be the laughingstock of all of the divine prefecture. All these voices rang one after another as cultivators of the divine prefecture attempt to persuade the city lord of Tianyan to permit Wang Xiao to continue, in the hopes of vanquishing Ziwei and slaying Yi Futian. The city lord of Tianyan was agitated by all these chatter, as his eyes, now sharper than ever, assessing the battlefield. However, some cultivators appealed directly to Wang Xiao. Wang Xiao, as you command the imperial arms, you are invincible under the great emperor. He has nowhere to go now, and his words are as good as that of a dead man. If you continue the attack, he will surely die. This person who spoke was a cultivator from Haotian clan, part of the ancient god clan. Shut up, the city lord of Tianyan scolded the speaker, and cut him off. The clan leader of Haotian clan looked askance at the city lord. Even though they all belonged to the ancient god clans, they were, in fact, always secretly vying for power. By goading Wang Xiao to make a move, the Haotian clan would be in a position to profit no matter the result. Actually, it was best that both sides lose. Ziwei sacked and Wang Xiao dead. The city lord of Tianyan was a scheming old fox, and knew very well the motivations behind the other's rhetoric, which accounted for his blunt reproach. What does the city lord mean by this? The clan leader of Haotian clan pressed coldly. Before our departure, even the city lord has said that the goal for the alliance is to rid of Ziwei and Yi Futian, and that is why Wang Xiao, invincible under the great emperor, brought the imperial arms with him. Isn't that so? This remark silenced the city lord of Tianyan, and he had no good answer. Other cultivators were looking at him too, and gave the city lord of Tianyan a slight pressure. He silently cursed these bastards inside, but this was the situation in front of him. Invincible under the great emperor? A burst of sarcastic laughter came out, and he said, "Are you still deceiving yourselves? Without the imperial arms, killing him is as easy as killing an ant." Such a character dared to claim that he was invincible under the great emperor? How shameless! Were all the cultivators in the divine prefecture already turning on each other? If so, it couldn't be better. These principalities of divine prefecture had all hatched their plan, and a true alliance was impossible. They would crumble at the slightest sign of infighting and be defeated. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2574. Heaven Tempering Enumeration. Chapter 2574. Heaven Tempering Enumeration. Wang Zhao's eyes focused on the Ziwei segmentum below. In those eyes, divine flames seemed to linger as he raised his arms slightly. It seemed as if he couldn't hold back the urge to continue the fight. But at that very same moment, the stars in the sky lit up brightly as the radiant sword light permeated the heavens. This would be a battle that neither would win. Wang Xiao wanted to get inside the Ziwei segmentum, and he may be killed by Yi Futian in the process. Perhaps Wang Xiao could break through their defense and invade the Ziwei segmentum to conquer it. But at what price? No one had the answer. Wang Xiao. Just as everyone from the divine prefecture persuaded Wang Xiao to take action, the city lord of Tianyan called out to him. Immediately Wang Zhao's arm stopped in the air, and he looked in the direction of the city lord of Tianyan. The city lord of Tianyan said, loud and clear, "With the will of the great emperor, Ziwei will be imprisoned. If Yi Futian is too stubborn to repent, let the Ziwei segmentum live and die as it chooses." Wang Xiao understood what the city lord of Tianyan meant. The Wang family of Tianyan City was directly descended from Tianyan the Great. Among the ancient god clan of Wang, they had more than just one imperial arm. Previously, the cultivators of the divine prefecture wanted Tianyan City to take action, bring the imperial arms, and imprison Ziwei Segmentum, because they knew that the city lord's office was in possession of terrifying imperial arms that could imprison everything. However, if they were imprisoned, they wouldn't be able to take down Yi Futian, and they probably wouldn't be able to get the divine treasures he possessed. Moreover, it may cause the entire Ziwei Segmentum to weaken, and its eventual destruction. Doing so may very well attract criticisms from all sides, because even Princess Donghuang had cautioned them not to take such extreme actions. Imprison Ziwei. When these top forces from the Divine Prefecture heard the words of the city lord of Tianyan, they immediately knew what it was that he wanted Wang Xiao to do. Many people couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Of course, they were hoping for an all-out invasion of Ziwei Segmentum. They wanted to step into Ziwei, capture Yi Futian, seize the divine treasures, rule Ziwei Segmentum, and control the starry cultivation court. But if Ziwei were to be imprisoned, everything would be a pipe dream, and none of the things they wanted would be realized. Of course, then there was the question of how the city lord of Tianyan would want to accomplish this. In the case of imprisonment, they would need to leave imperial arms here at Ziwei Segmentum, and wouldn't take it away. Otherwise, how could they imprison an entire segmentum if the imperial arms were absent? Would Tianyan City be willing to relinquish imperial arms for that? But things had gotten to this point, and it had to end somehow. They couldn't let Yi Futian and the Ziwei Segmentum off the hook and return home with their tails between their legs. None of the forces from the Divine Prefecture could accept this ending, but especially not Tianyan City. They could not possibly take an ending in which they failed to break through the defense of Ziwei Segmentum and returned in defeat. Therefore, something had to be done. Imprisonment. Wang Zhao's countenance did not look so great when he heard the words of his grandfather, the city lord of Tianyan. The suggestion of imprisonment implied that the attack this time was a total failure, and he could not overpower Yi Futian. Even with the imperial arms, he was unable to sack Ziwei Segmentum. However, they may not be able to get inside Ziwei. Still, they couldn't leave just like that either, letting both Ziwei Segmentum and Yi Futian go free. So imprisonment was the only other alternative. He needed to leave imperial arms behind and use them to shut down the Ziwei Segmentum. This was not the outcome that Wang Xiao anticipated, but he didn't seem to have a better choice at the moment. The cultivators of the Divine Prefecture stood quietly in the boundless void and did not speak. The situation was such that it was meaningless for them to say anything more. Tianyan City would have to decide on its own, but this alliance was a failure. All the great forces in the Divine Prefecture, including the ancient god clans, banded together to come for the kill, but they could not take a step into Ziwei. Very well, Wang Xiao responded. As soon as his voice faded, he gave a wave of his hand, and suddenly, a second imperial arm appeared in the endless starry sky. These imperial arms hovered in the boundless void and were expanding rapidly. It was a picture scroll, and the scroll was covered with golden divine flames devouring the great path. Wang Xiao raised his head and looked at the scroll in the void. A divine light between his brows fell on the picture scroll. His expression was solemn as he said, "Disciple Wang Xiao asks my ancestor to reveal his spirit to temper this corner of the sky." Upon him, the divine light penetrated the picture scroll, and suddenly little spots of light lit up the scroll, becoming more and more radiant until a holy phantom appeared. The phantom turned into a face, and it was the face of Tianyan the Great. An incomparable aura enveloped the boundless space between heaven and earth. In an instant, the entire atmosphere was saturated with that aura. Then the picture scroll seemed to replicate itself, converting that infinite starry sky into a part of it. This horrific scene continued to spread, extending into the direction of Ziwei Segmentum. When Yi Futian perceived this, he was not particularly pleased. Another imperial arm was at work. Yi Futian, you still have a chance to repent. Otherwise, once the heaven-tempering enumeration is unleashed, Ziwei will no longer exist. Wang Xiao's voice was cold as ice, ringing through the space. This imperial arms was the heaven-tempering enumeration, capable of tempering a world, and was once the treasure of Tianyan the Great in refining divine arms. The starlight circulated, and the starry light screen continued to move and flow, providing cover for the Ziwei segmentum, shrouding the entire Ziwei segmentum within, so that it would not be corroded by that divine flames from the outside. The heaven-tempering enumeration continued to expand along with the starry light screen, getting larger until it gradually covered all of the Ziwei segmentum. If it weren't for the defense that was already set up, heaven-tempering enumeration would be able to gain a foothold inside the segmentum and incinerate it. Buzz! Once the heaven-tempering enumeration was in place, the phantom of the great emperor disappeared as well. However, that heaven-tempering enumeration, which shrouded the Ziwei segmentum, had already begun tempering all existence within this world, including the power of the Great Path, which had been refined. Divine flames rained down from the heaven-tempering enumeration and fell on the starry light screen. The golden divine flames covered the light screen, wanting to worm their way in, but could not burn through it immediately. Yi Futian, under the heaven-tempering enumeration, how long do you think the Ziwei segmentum can persist? Wang Xiao continued. If you stand down, I can let the cultivators of Ziwei segmentum go, including your family. He wanted Yi Futian to bow his head and admit defeat. It was only Yi Futian that he wanted. He couldn't care less about everyone else. Under the heaven-tempering enumeration, the entire world became blazing hot. If it weren't for the starry light screen, the whole segmentum would already be burnt up. Such a ruthless resolve? Yi Futian was cold to the core. He said, "One day, even if you kneel down to beg for mercy, I will not spare any of the cultivators from the Wang family in the city lord's office of Tianyan City." Countless people had already perished from the previous blow, and there was no telling how many more might follow them under the attack of the heaven-tempering enumeration at this moment. For as long as he lived, one of his goals would be to immolate the entire city lord's office of Tianyan City, and he would be sure to achieve it. Because of you and you alone, Ziwei is where it is today, Wang Xiao said in an icy voice. I will protect Ziwei, Yi Futian replied. Wang Xiao gave a cold snort as he waved his hand. Instantly, the heaven-tempering enumeration closed, and the two worlds seemed to be separated outside of the Ziwei segmentum and inside of Ziwei segmentum. Outside of the imprisoned Ziwei segmentum, Wang Xiao's expression was steely. He did not feel any elation, as his eyes were glued on the space below. He could no longer see any signs of Yi Futian. Although he successfully did as he had been told, he did not feel victorious. He did not defeat Yi Futian. Not then, and not now. That's it. Is it imprisoned now? Some top cultivators from the Divine Prefecture were speechless as they witnessed the sight before them. It was as if they were utterly superfluous. This war ended like this. Under the heaven-tempering enumeration, Yi Futian's defense would not last long. Sooner or later, it would be incinerated. Then Ziwei segmentum would follow. Once the Great Path was refined, everything would no longer exist. This vast world of Ziwei would turn into a world of flames before it was completely consumed. It's over, the city lord of Tianyan proclaimed. His eyes surveyed the cultivators from the Divine Prefecture. He continued, everyone has worked hard on this quest. Under the heaven-tempering enumeration, Ziwei segmentum will be turned into a realm of hellfire. All the great paths will cease to exist, and with time, it will disappear forever. Then, wouldn't that mean Yi Futian will also perish with it? That would be a shame. Some cultivators from the Divine Prefecture spoke up. Although they were enemies with Yi Futian, they felt conflicted inside. They found it a pity that Yi Futian would fall like this into a realm of fire. He doesn't know what is good for him, so this is the only way it can be. The city lord of Tianyan said loudly. Under the heaven-tempering enumeration, the world will change, and will never be the same as it was. The Ziwei segmentum may very well cease to exist. Was Ziwei segmentum to be nothing but a wasteland? Everyone please go back. Business here is over. Now we just need to wait to witness its final demise. The city lord of Tianyan said to all the cultivators of the Divine Prefecture, but they seemed reluctant to leave. They stood in the boundless starry sky, taking everything in. I'll be here to ascertain their demise, Wang Xiao said to the city lord of Tianyan. He would wait here instead of returning to Tianyan City. He wanted to witness the destruction of Yi Futian and see all of this come to an end. Or else, that shadow in his heart would never be dispelled. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2575, Indestructible. Chapter 2575, Indestructible. Within the Ziwei segmentum, everyone raised their heads to look at the sky above. No matter on which continent they were cultivating, they were witnessing this extremely shocking sight. The heaven had turned flaming gold in color, with a terrifying pattern of flames, as if it intended to temper the entire world. Someone wanted to destroy the Ziwei segmentum. In Ziwei Imperial Palace, Lord Chun and the others looked up into the sky. They knew that it was extremely far away from them, but they could see it clearly because the entire world was covered by it. The destructive divine light also covered the Ziwei segmentum, so that no matter where they were, it was omnipresent. What was the outcome of this battle? The vibration seemed to have stopped, and the Ziwei segmentum did not continue to oscillate. This could only mean that the previous battle had ended. However, what was this in front of them right now? There were many living creatures on the countless number of cultivation continents in the Ziwei segmentum, not just powerful cultivators. Many of them did not understand everything that was happening in their world. However, after today they would know what this world was really like, and how shocking was the real world. The place where they lived and cultivated was just a corner of the world, as inconspicuous as a grain of sand in the desert. For the endless living beings that existed in the entire Ziwei segmentum, this day was earth-shaking. At the same time, aside from the shock they felt, there was also a disquiet. The golden divine flames filled the sky, and the entire world was wrapped in it. Was this a force that could bring about the end of days? Would Ziwei segmentum be obliterated? And would their place of cultivation be no more? Many people started to pray, bowing to the void. They prayed in their hearts that they would receive the protection of Ziwei the Great. In Ziwei segmentum, everyone believed in Ziwei. Ziwei the Great was their one and only god. Look yonder. Someone looked up into the sky. After the terrifying golden divine flames had shut down their world, these flames seemed to want to swallow the entire world whole. However, at this time, beneath the golden divine flames, an extremely bright starry light screen lit up. Likewise, this starry light screen also covered the entire world, preventing the invasion of the golden divine flames. Someone is protecting us. The people of Ziwei segmentum continued worshipping toward the sky. Is it Ziwei the Great revealing himself? Their belief in Ziwei came from the bottom of their hearts. After all, the entire Ziwei segmentum was a world created by Ziwei the Great. It's Futian. In Ziwei Imperial Palace, Lord Taishian was not surprised when he saw the scene above the sky. The cultivators in the Imperial Palace fixated on the sight above them. They were more worried than shocked. "I'll go take a look," said Lord Chun as his body levitated into the air, heading higher up into the sky. Now the battle seemed to be over. The next step would be to resist that golden divine flames. He wanted to see what was happening there, and how Yi Futian was doing. "I'm going too." Many people left by air at the same time, heading towards the sky. This battle belonged to Yi Futian alone. He alone had resisted the army from Divine Prefecture, and blocked the attack of the Imperial arms. And they could do nothing to help him, except watch the battle inside the safety of Ziwei Imperial Palace. They were so uncomfortable it felt as if their hearts were on fire. Hua Jieyu was also among those who went into the air. Those eyes that stared into the firmament were filled with worries and concerns. High above in the starry sky, Lord Chun and the others found signs of Yi Futian. Here was a starry sky surrounded by billions of stars, circulating between heaven and earth, as if operated by a unique rhythm of its own. Yi Futian appeared in this starry sky as he sat cross-legged with eyes closed. His entire person seemed to have entered a state of chaos and semi-consciousness. Stars and divine light surrounded him, but that body seemed a little elusive. What was even more astounding was that millions of starry divine light bloomed from Yi Futian, as if they were reaching and connecting to the stars in heaven. thus forming a starry defense. It was a coherent starry light screen functioning like a massive umbrella in the starry sky, which blocked the golden divine flames from entering in. Lord Chun and the others saw that destructive golden flames, which were agitated with madness as they swallowed up the power of the great path. It wanted to purify all the auras in the world, to burn and refine them. This was the imperial arms, heaven-tempering enumeration. Terrifying golden divine flames invaded, interwoven with the starry light screen. It seemed to be eating away the light of the starry great path slowly, swallowing and refining the great path of the stars. Many stars surrounding the sky were covered bit by the golden divine flames, as if they could be refined and become part of the divine flames at any time. He is greatly weakened, Lord Chen said as he looked at Yi Futian. Hua Ji wanted to step forward, but stopped herself. No matter how much she wanted to, she had to restrain herself. She was worried that if she touched Yi Futian, there would be unimaginable consequences. Yi Futian, at this moment, had fallen into a state of selflessness. He no longer belonged to himself, but this starry world. But at this moment, there was an extremely vibrant aura of life that bloomed from him. As the divine glory gleamed, it seemed that a tree of life appeared upon him, which merged as one with him, so that his aura of life could not be extinguished. He is still fighting it. Hua Jiyu's beautiful eyes were a little red. Then they saw wisps of aura spreading towards the heavens from Yi Futian. Those ancient branches and leaves spread towards the firmament, as if to populate this starry sky. As that aura spread, all the stars in heaven seemed to become one. With Yi Futian as the center, as if he was the root of this divine tree, the stars in heaven became the branches and leaves of the sacred tree. A starry divine tree seemed to have come into being. There was an expression of disbelief on Lord Chen's face, as well as the others, as they watched the incomparable divine light shrouded this corner of the world. All of them looked at Yi Futian and heard Lord Chen say, "Let's leave here and not disturb him." "I'll stay here with him," Hua Jiyu said. "That's fine." Lord Chen nodded and led the others away, with only Hua Jiyu remaining. The miracles in the starry sky continued to evolve. The outer limits of the entire world were enveloped by the starry divine light. It was impossible to see everything inside of it, but Hua Jiyu was standing inside. Vaguely, it could be seen that she was standing underneath this incredibly shocking starry divine tree. Yi Futian had turned into a divine tree, and all the stars in the heavens were growing on this divine tree. At this moment, those golden divine flames on the periphery roared as they were unable to invade anywhere, because they were being isolated. There seemed to be two layers of seals. The heaven-tempering enumeration imprisoned Ziwei segmentum, as the starry divine tree imprisoned the heaven-tempering enumeration in turn, isolating it from everything else. Hua Jiyu sat cross-legged, not far from Yi Futian. She looked at him and believed that he would create miracles. Perhaps to him, this was just another kind of cultivation, and Yi Futian would come through this trial just fine. The vision above the firmament was something that the people of the Ziwei segmentum could neither forget nor ignore. All of them wanted to know what had happened. Afterward, Ziwei Imperial Palace announced to the world that the forces from Divine Prefecture had banded together for the express purpose of attacking Ziwei with the aid of the Imperial arms. They wanted to rob Ziwei of the divine treasures left by Ziwei the Great and control the Ziwei segmentum. At this time of unprecedented crisis, the heir of Ziwei the Great, the Palace Lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace, Yi Futian, used his power to fight against the Imperial arms, intercepted the cultivators from Divine Prefecture single-handedly. With his body of flesh and blood, aided by the will of Ziwei the Great, he was able to block that tempering Imperial arms outside of Ziwei segmentum, saving Ziwei from destruction. The Ziwei segmentum dispersed this news to all the stars and the forces that were at the level of the overlords until it had spread to all corners of Ziwei segmentum. They assured everyone that there was no need to panic. Instantly, Yi Futian's name became the stuff of legends in Ziwei segmentum. Yi Futian, the heir of Ziwei the Great, was also the spokesperson of Ziwei the Great in this world. Countless cultivators in Ziwei segmentum bowed down and worshipped him. At the same time, This incident incensed everyone inside Ziwei segmentum. The trend to cultivate in the entire Ziwei segmentum had reached its peak instantaneously. Countless aspiring talents had gone to ask permission to be admitted into Ziwei Imperial Palace to cultivate, preparing to fight against the Divine Prefecture one day. Taking this opportunity, the Ziwei Imperial Palace announced to all of Ziwei segmentum that it would have the largest recruitment of cultivators in its history. Those who were the most outstanding in the entire Ziwei segmentum would be trained inside Ziwei Imperial Palace as part of its plan to strike back in the future. For a time, this news rocked all of Ziwei segmentum, making way for a grand occasion that had never been seen before. Ziwei segmentum was a world in isolation, never involved itself in the strife and confrontations of the outside world. The invasion by the Divine Prefecture ultimately ignited the desire for cultivation within the Ziwei segmentum. At the same time, the people inside Ziwei Imperial Palace, Yi Futian's old comrades, also began to cultivate in earnest. No one had any ideas if Yi Futian could survive this catastrophe and emerge safe and sound. They had no idea how this would end, but they did know they had to work hard to continuously elevate their cultivation realm. In this battle of invasion incited by the Divine Prefecture, Yi Futian made good of his promise. The only way the people of Divine Prefecture could get inside of Ziwei segmentum was to step over his dead body. He used his own body to block the threats outside, ensuring the safety of Ziwei segmentum. When the feast in Ziwei segmentum was about to begin, countless cultivators gathered at Ziwei Imperial Palace. Lord Chun presided in the upper main seat as the host of the feast, but there was an empty space next to him, right in the center, which he did not occupy. There was one person who had not returned. 3 years later, outside of the starry sky, Wang Xiao was still there. He had not left. He said he wanted to witness the end of everything and confirm the outcome, so he was still here. He wanted to witness the moment when heaven-tempering enumeration melted down the Ziwei segmentum and Yi Futian's death. But after 3 years, none of this had happened yet. The destructive power of heaven-tempering enumeration seemed to be cut off on the outside, and had not been able to invade the interior of Ziwei segmentum. Heaven-tempering enumeration was an imperial arm that had covered the entire world, but so far, it had not been able to temper the Ziwei segmentum. He could even perceive that the divine flames within the heaven-tempering enumeration were still locking horns with those endless stars. The two intertwined, but one had not been able to swallow nor destroy the other. This meant that Yi Futian had been battling with him for 3 years now, and he had persevered. Not only did he not perish, but he also was still resisting the attacks of the heaven-tempering enumeration, protecting Ziwei segmentum from the fate of extinction. At this time, Wang Xiao opened his eyes and looked at the space below. Could Yi Futian really stave the attack of the heaven-tempering enumeration forever? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2576. When to return. Chapter 2576. When to return. Wang Xiao took out a jade slip and saw an elusive face appear in it. At the same time, a voice asked him, "Wang Xiao, what's happening there?" This voice was, not surprisingly, the voice of the city lord of Tianyan. 3 years had passed since that battle. Of course, cultivators of the Divine Prefecture could not have continued to stay there. They were long gone. Only Wang Xiao, with his stubborn obsession, had wanted to wait for a definitive ending, and that was to witness Yi Futian's destruction. But 3 years later he was still waiting. "Nothing has changed," Wang Xiao responded. "Come back," the city lord of Tianyan said. The heaven-tempering enumeration shut down the Ziwei segmentum. Sooner or later, it will melt down that segmentum. He may resist it for a time, but he can't stop it forever. Right now, great changes are taking place in the Divine Prefecture. It's been 3 years, and it's time for you to let go and come back. No matter what happened 3 years ago, you should always remember that you are invincible under the great emperor. Invincible? Wang Xiao murmured. He had said that back then, But Yi Futian's sarcastic voice could still be heard in his head. Was he truly invincible under the Great Emperor? At least, in the Ziwei segmentum here, there was one person he couldn't defeat. It was just that now he was trapped by the heaven-tempering enumeration, and would eventually perish because of it. After a moment of silence, Wang Xiao took a deep breath and said, "Fine." When his voice faded, he got up and put the jade slip away. He looked down at the place that was sealed off by the heaven-tempering enumeration and said, "Yi Futian, you are unparalleled in talent and endowed with a genius rarely seen in the world. I have to admit that I am not as good as you. However, you are born at the wrong time, and your life is doomed to a tragic end. You will eventually perish under this heaven-tempering enumeration, and turn into nothing more than dust and smoke. 3 years ago, you defeated me, but now in the land of the Divine Prefecture, I am still the unraveled under the Great Emperor. Although I did use the Imperial Arms, the ability to summon Imperial Arms was, in itself, a part of my strength. Under the Great Emperor, I Wang Xiao, am still in existence of the unraveled. Unfortunately, you won't be seeing me on my path of ascension as the Great Emperor." After that, there was a strong determination in his eyes as he turned, leaving this place behind. No matter what happened 3 years ago, the fact remained. He recognized Yi Futian's talent and admitted that he was not better than Yi Futian. However, he firmly believed that he Wang Xiao was unparalleled under the Great Emperor. This was a belief, and for a cultivator like him, this kind of belief was indispensable. If he didn't have this belief to hold on to, how would he embark on the road to become a great emperor himself? He was sure he would be able to achieve this goal. Thus Wang Xiao left. The boundless space was totally silent. The divine light from the heaven-tempering enumeration, dazzled in the endless void, continued to seal the Ziwei segmentum. At this time, within the bounds of the Ziwei segmentum, the war of attrition between the heaven-tempering enumeration and the billions of stars had never ceased. The heaven-tempering enumeration wanted to melt down the stars in the heavens, but could not do it. A figure sat cross-legged in the center of these billions of stars, bathed in infinite starlight, like a child born of the starry sky. Even his figure looked a little surreal and elusive. It was as if it did not exist. Next to that ethereal and elusive figure, a gorgeous woman was sitting quietly there cultivating. She was like Jiotian goddess, who had been accompanying him always, and never left his side. At this time, some people came from the sky, and several powerful cultivators had arrived. It was Lord Chun and the others, with Gu Donglu, Zhuge Mingyue, Xia Qingyuan in tow. They were here to see Yi Futian. Unless they are cultivating in retreat, they would come here every year. But everything seemed to be the same as 3 years ago, and no change had taken place. "It's still the same," Lord Taixian whispered. "There didn't seem to be any significant changes. It's beautiful here." Next to them, Zhuge Mingyue looked at this starry sky world with a smile in his bright eyes. He looked in the direction where Yi Futian was and said, "Little junior brother, I know you can hear me. Your cultivation here must be progressing. Ziwei Imperial Palace has been doing well over the past 3 years, and is on the right track. More and more talented figures have poured into the Ziwei Imperial Palace to become disciples of the palace. There are even many Runhuang with endless potential. The senior members of Ziwei Imperial Palace are also working hard to improve their cultivation. Lord Taixian and the others are cultivating the power of Taichu and have made great progress. The 3 little guys are all striving towards the peak of Renhuang. Your third senior brother is almost there as well. Taoist monk Mu's alchemical skill is improving daily, and he's now very handy in refining the subdivine elixirs. The Ziwei segmentum, as well as Ziwei Imperial Palace, are getting stronger than ever. Now we are just waiting for you to return, to break this imprisonment, and lead Ziwei segmentum to a higher high." No one responded, but above the sky, the starlight sprinkled down. Zhuge Mingyue stretched out her hand, as if she could see those starlight falling into the palm of her hand. When she saw this beautiful sight, Zhuge Mingyue smiled brilliantly and said, "Little junior brother, is that you responding? In this starry sky world, this is the form in which you existed, right?" Next to Zhuge Mingyue, Gu Donglu looked at the elusive figure of Yi Futian in front. He did not speak, but he also believed that his little junior brother, who had created numerous miracles many times over, would definitely return to them. He had never doubted that because he was the predestined one chosen by their master, they would be going to Donghuang Imperial Palace together to pick up their master. Let's go, Lord Chen said. They still had a lot of things that needed to be done. They had to cultivate and improve themselves continuously. Everyone nodded. Zhuge Mingyue looked over there and said, little junior brother has Jiyu here to keep him company, so I guess he will not be lonely. Lord Chen looked over there and said, Palace Lord, Ziwei Imperial Palace, and even the entire Ziwei segmentum, will be waiting for you. Now we won't disturb your cultivation. Having said that, he bowed slightly in the direction yonder before all the cultivators turned to leave. They accepted that Yi Futian was cultivating here. After everyone left, the place returned to its previous quietude again. Yi Futian was like an ancient starry tree, erected underneath billions of stars, yet blended harmoniously with it, the two as one. Hua Jiyu seemed to be sitting under this tree, bathed in the starlight and cultivating quietly. This scene was as beautiful as a picture. Time flew, and in a blink of an eye, 10 years had passed since the great battle took place outside the Ziwei segmentum. 10 years was not a long time in the long history of the cultivation world, and it could even be said to be a pretty brief period of time. In the cultivation world, many cultivators were able to break through a realm in 10 years, so it was considered a very short time. But for Ziwei segmentum, these 10 years were a long and endless 10 years. Over the past 10 years, the Ziwei segmentum had undergone a lot of changes. Ziwei Imperial Palace had changed the most. The most obvious change was that all the cultivators in the Ziwei Imperial Palace were constantly getting stronger, and their cultivation was improving. The look of the entire Ziwei Imperial Palace had been completely transformed. Except for the top-level figures, anyone under the realm of Tribulation Plane was no longer who they were once upon a time. In that gloriously radiant starry sky, a few more figures arrived at this time. It was 4 young people, all of them endowed with extraordinary temperament, and each one of them gave out a sense of being very unusual. Master, Masteress. The 4 of them came not far in front of Yi Futian, and bowed slightly to Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu, who was beside him. Yi Futian didn't respond, and Hua Jiyu seemed to have also entered into a certain state of concentration, immersed in a world of her cultivation, so they did not hear the voices of the 4. Hush! Feng Xiyuan, who was at the front, sensed something, made a gesture to silence the others and shook his head. He whispered, the Masteress has been with the Master here. She seems to have entered into a special state of cultivation as well. Well, let's not disturb the Masteress, Little Ling nodded. The 4 of them were not youngsters anymore, and their cultivation had reached a very high level. After all, they were born with the path, with the natural body of the great path, who were also enlightened by the teacher, so their cultivation had always been smooth sailing. Master, we are here to tell you some good news. Not long ago, I have entered the 9th realm of Renhuang. Now I am at the top of Renhuang realm. If I go further, I will be experiencing the divine tribulation of the great path. Feng Xiyuan whispered to the figure in front of him and continued, Little Ling and the other 3 are already in the 8th realm of Renhuang. Although Duo Yu was late in starting his cultivation, his level was not lower than Little Ling or Tai Tu. I believe it won't take more than a few years for all of them to be like me, reaching the top level of Renhuang. Obviously, they were here to give the good news to Yi Futian. All 4 of them were born inside the village, so they were different from the people outside. 30 years ago, before they went with Yi Futian to the Western Heavenly World, they had already entered the realm of Renhuang. Now more than 30 years had passed. For so many years, they had never stopped working on themselves, whether it was at Spirit Mountain back then, or in the Ziwei segmentum right now. Therefore they had made rapid progress. There is also another good news. Lord Taixian and the others have been cultivating the power of Taichu, and they have seen its effect already. The path of Taichu gave them the opportunity to transform again. Feng Xiyuan continued. Previously, I had considered taking some elixirs to help me break through the realm, but that old fellow Taoist monk Mu wouldn't do it. He only gave me some useless pills. He said he would save the good ones for when I am ready to experience the tribulation plane. Fortunately, my talent is outstanding and I broke through the realm by myself, so I haven't dishonored my master. Master, don't listen to his nonsense. The elixirs given by Elder Taoist monk Mu are all good, and he has been watching over us. Other elders, such as Lord Chun, have also been taking care of us and instructing us in our cultivation, and that accounts for our rapid progress. When I enter the 9th realm of Renhuang, I will come again to give you the good news. As she was speaking, she looked at Tai Tu next to her and said, "It's your turn. What do you want to say to the master?" Tai Tu scratched his head. Although he was not a young kid anymore, he appeared a little naive as always. He looked in front and said, "Master, I will work hard to cultivate and follow you to the divine prefecture in the future to seek our revenge." After speaking, they looked at Duoyu behind them and saw that he did not speak. Instead, he knelt and bowed in the direction of Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu. The three of them didn't say anything more, as they understood Duoyu's quiet personality very well. Looking forward again, Little Ling continued, "Master, when can you come back? Little Ling misses you so much." As she was speaking, her eyes became moist and full of tears. It had been 10 years, and the master still hadn't returned. Were they really not worried at all? Actually, they were all terrified. They were scared that the master would never come back. "Don't be weak," Fang Xiyuan whispered. "Master, don't worry. I will take care of the three of them and wait for your return." With that, he bowed down in front of them. Little Ling wiped her eyes and bowed down as well. She stared in front for a long time, reluctant to leave. "Let's not bother the master and the masteress in their cultivation," Fang Xiyuan said, pulling Little Ling up so the four of them could leave here together. After they left, from Yi Futian's body, those divine lights leading to the heavens were like leaves on branches, swaying as if they were in the wind, and sprinkled the starlight all around. When Feng Xiyuan and the others were leaving, the starlight seemed to be following close behind. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2577. Divine Prefecture Calendar Year 100128. Chapter 2577. Divine Prefecture Calendar Year 100128 in the year 100128 of the Divine Prefecture Calendar. A full 28 years had passed since the battle took place in the Ziwei Segmentum. Over the past 28 years, the forces from the Divine Prefecture had gradually forgotten about the war that took place in the Ziwei Segmentum. Time could fade away many things, especially under the circumstance in which the Ziwei Segmentum was sealed. With the heaven tempering enumeration in place, those in the Divine Prefecture had the impression that it was only a matter of time before the Ziwei Segmentum became a world of hellfire, and it was no longer worth their time to give the issue any more attention. On the other hand, all the principalities in the Divine Prefecture had experienced one major event after another. So who else would give any more thoughts to Ziwei Segmentum? Even Tianyan City slowly forgot about it. Perhaps only Wang Xiao would still remember it from time to time. He thought that Yi Futian was probably using his own life as the cost to block the destructive power of the heaven tempering enumeration. In a few more years, everything would be destroyed by flames. At that time, he would be able to retrieve the heaven tempering enumeration. Just as everyone had gradually forgotten about the Ziwei Segmentum, the starry sky inside the Ziwei Segmentum had undergone some subtle changes. At this time, in the forbidden starry sky, there were many cultivators there, including Lord Chun and the others, who were there watching the changes happening in front of them. Just as before, Lord Chun and the others would come here from time to time. 2 years ago, they discovered that this starry sky world was a little different from before. Lord Chun and his party stood in the starry sky, looking at the sky full of stars. More and more, Yi Futian resembled a starry divine tree, and all the stars in the heavens were like the fruits upon the tree. At the moment, the sky full of stars was swallowing up the destructive fire from the heaven-tempering enumeration and bringing it back into the stars. In addition, the stars in the heavens seemed to be in harmony with the aura of all the great paths of the world, making the light of the stars even brighter. Faintly, it seemed to overpower the destructive divine glory released from the heaven-tempering enumeration. At the same time, the sky full of starlight even began to flow backward, nourishing Yi Futian's divine body, making him radiant all over, like a bona fide starry divine body. In his elusive body of flesh and blood, the starry sky world could vaguely be seen. The palace lord must still be there, and he is cultivating and getting stronger. Lord Chun looked solemn as he stared at Yi Futian's figure in the starry sky in front of him. The world of heavens was infinitely radiant, like a world of galaxy. This galaxy was dominated by the starry divine tree, and even he was shocked by such wondrous sight. Morongyu nodded. This place here is very suitable for us to cultivate. The palace lord is indeed a genius, the true talent from the heavens. Within the divine prefecture, who can compare with him? Is it possible that this battle was a blessing in disguise for the palace lord? After waiting for a full 28 years, many people have been disappointed, scared, and even became hopeless at times. They came here often to visit Yi Futian, because they were worried that it would be the last time, and that they would never see him again. However, 2 years ago, this worry gradually subsided as they regained their confidence. Especially recently when this situation had become more obvious. Yi Futian must have retained his consciousness. He had never disappeared, and he had always been there, guarding the Ziwei segmentum. More importantly, in the process of keeping them safe, he was looking for a way to bring the standoff to an end. Now, Yi Futian seemed to have found a solution, as he was seeking a way to break through the heaven-tempering enumeration. Perhaps there was a real chance that it could be done. Is the master coming back? Little Ling murmured behind him. A strong hope surged in their hearts. They had waited for this day for too long. It had been 28 years. Even when he went to cultivate at the Western heavenly world of Buddhism, it had not been as long as this. Maybe he can come back at any time. Now we have to wait patiently. Lord Chen said. What is strange is that the palace lord's wife seems to be the same as the palace lord. Her telekinesis power has integrated into the stars in the heavens. We have no idea what she was going through with the palace lord. Maybe they are cultivating together, said Morongyu. Now, everyone began to look forward to the return of the palace lord. 28 years ago, the palace lord was able to defeat Wang Xiao with a single strike. At the level of the first divine tribulation of the Great Path, it was almost impossible for him to find an opponent worthy of him. How strong would the palace lord be if he had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path? Go back for now. Let's not disturb the palace lord's cultivation for the time being, Lord Chen said. Right now, they were actually feeling quite relieved that they no longer had to worry about Yi Futian's safety. Very well. Everyone nodded as they withdrew one after the other. Now they just needed to wait patiently for Yi Futian's return. After the crowd left, the stars in the heavens, as usual, were devouring that heaven-tempering divine fire day after day. It was as if they would never stop. As time went on day by day, the stars in the heavens released the starry divine light, like the leaves on willow branches, spreading towards the boundless space, permeating into every corner. They had even begun reaching inside the heaven-tempering enumeration, penetrating it, constantly eroding the imperial arms. The imperial arms were imbued with spirit, and the heaven-tempering enumeration seemed to be fighting back, as an even more violent heaven-tempering divine fire was burning, attempting to immolate the power of the stars. However, that power of the Great Path was like an indelible and immortal path that could not be tempered. It continued its infiltration and fought against the divine fire, even reversing its tempering and swallowing the fire instead. Buzz! Gradually, a dazzling divine light burst out above the heaven-tempering enumeration, flooding the boundless space. At this moment inside Ziwei segmentum, all the cultivators looked up at the sky as if they too felt a supreme heavenly might of destruction. It was as if the imperial arms were enraged. At the same time, Wang Xiao had sensed it as well in the divine prefecture, as if the heaven-tempering enumeration was extremely angered. Boom! Above the heaven-tempering enumeration, it seemed as if there was a shower of meteors trying to burn up the stars in the sky, and the sea of fire enveloped the entire periphery of the Ziwei segmentum, terrifying to the extreme. All the cultivators in Ziwei segmentum were horrified, their faces full of shock. Many people could feel the fear that came from the depths of their souls. What exactly was happening? The imperial arms were so angry. It was as if imperial might was about to descend. The entire Ziwei world seemed to be refined and immolated. Above the firmament, in the heaven-tempering enumeration, there appeared an awesome figure. It was Tianyin the Great, with extremely dominance. His might was enough to shock the heavens. It was as if the great emperor's will had been awakened. This was the spirit of the imperial arms, and now it was mad. Because a power tried to eat away the imperial arms and eat away at him. No! Inside Ziwei Imperial Palace, Lord Chun and the others looked up in the sky, as the expressions on their faces changed. The starry sky world seemed to have changed as it had urged the will of Tianyin the Great, so that the great emperor had manifested and sent divine flames to destroy the world. Could Yi Futian bear it? They no longer had the kind of calmness they had before. At this moment, their hearts were in their throats. At the same time, all the stars in the starry sky world were even more dazzling. Yi Futian had morphed into the starry divine tree, as incomparably brilliant divine light permeated from him. Suddenly, his eyes opened, and the stars in the heavens were as one body, and he had incarnated as the ruler of this starry sky. Buzz! Accompanied with the falling starlight, a massive and boundless phantom appeared to cover Yi Futian's figure, as if what was growing on this divine tree of stars was the figure of Ziwei the Great. The moment this figure appeared, everyone in Ziwei segmentum saw it. All of them were inexplicably excited by this sight. Ziwei descended in the world, the great emperor is showing himself. Some worshipped the sky above. The will of Ziwei the Great seemed to have been completely awakened at this moment. Above the firmament, the two great emperors faced each other. This seemed to have been turned into a battle between the great emperors. Ziwei the Great bathed in starlight as the radiance of all the stars in the heavens merged into him. Suddenly, a supreme murderous might spread out and rushed straight into the sky. That murderous intent was terrifying to the extreme, for it was the murderous intent of emperors and kings. Instantly, the cultivators in the entire Ziwei segmentum were trembling. Their spiritual souls were suppressed as countless demonic beasts prostrated on the ground, daring not to raise their heads. Above the heaven-tempering enumeration, an incomparable divine light of destruction appeared and converged on the phantom of Tianyin the Great. The two great emperors had a confrontation. Buzz! The destructive heaven-tempering divine light came from the top, and the beam of light penetrated the heavens. At the same time, on the body of Ziwei the Great, a Ziwei divine sword with unparalleled murderous aura went up against the momentum. This purple divine sword turned into a ruinous purple light beam, as the golden flames and the white and purple divine light collided in the void. A storm of destruction swept out, and the entire Ziwei segmentum shuddered. The purple divine light directly pierced the beam of light that was flaming gold in color, then penetrated the phantom of Tianyin the Great, through and through. It continued upward and broke open the heaven-tempering enumeration, leaving a gaping hole in it. The imperial arms were destroyed. The blinding divine light caused everyone inside Ziwei segmentum to close their eyes, and they dared not take even a peek. After a long while, they finally opened their eyes and looked towards the firmament. As that terrible light of destruction gradually dissipated, everything was turning back to normal. Up above the boundless sky, the shadow that had hovered over them for the past 28 years was gone. That crisis of imminent destruction that hung above everyone's heads disappeared just like that. Inside Ziwei Imperial Palace, everyone raised their heads to look into the sky. When they saw the firmament had returned to normal, there was an incredibly brilliant smile in everyone's eyes. The shadow that had been buried in everyone's hearts for the past 28 years was finally gone. Yi Futian had managed to awaken the will of Ziwei the Great. The great emperor had manifested himself to destroy Tianyan and destroy the imperial arms. They had won. Let's go. Lord Chun and the others levitated into the sky and headed higher up into the sky. After some time, they came to the place above the firmament, where the residual of that destructive power remained. Their eyes looked around as if searching for something. At this moment, two figures drifted down from high above the sky. The man wore a white garment. He had a head of white hair, and he was handsome beyond words. The woman with an ethereal visage looked like the Jyotian goddess herself. They stood hand in hand and appeared in front of everyone. Moreover, their temperament seemed to have become somewhat different yet again. At this time, Yi Futian's closed eyes finally opened. The starry divine light dazzled and blinded everyone's eyes. Lord Chun watched these two returning and revealed a bright smile. They had not been able to laugh with such relief for a very long time. There were also Gu Donglu, Zhuge Mingyue, Xiaomuyu, Dou Zhao Chenyi, Fang Xiyuan, Blind Tai, and everyone smiled brightly. After 28 years, they were finally back. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2578, The Second Tribulation. Chapter 2578. The Second Tribulation. Yi Futian looked toward the others. They could even see the smile in his eyes gleaming like the stars. 28 years ago, the Divine Prefecture Alliance charged in with Tianyan City. They came with the Imperial Arm in an attempt to wipe out the Ziwei Segmentum, which was the great tribulation that the Ziwei Segmentum had met. Now 28 years had passed. They had overcome this tribulation. They did it. Today they could finally be considered to have won this war. From today onward, the people who should panic weren't the Ziwei Segmentum anymore, and it was the powers of the Divine Prefecture. Welcome back, Palace Lord. Lord Chun bowed and greeted Yi Futian. Welcome back, Palace Lord. The cultivators bowed and greeted Yi Futian one after another. Even the powerful cultivators previously from the Ziwei Segmentum Imperial Palace revered and submitted themselves to Yi Futian now. Just moments ago, they saw the manifestation of Ziwei the Great. Yi Futian was the true heir of Ziwei the Great. He fought the Divine Prefecture all alone with his power and saved the Ziwei Segmentum. He had awoken the will of the great emperor and obliterated the Imperial Arm. At this moment, countless cultivators were cheering in the Ziwei Segmentum. They bowed and prayed to the celestial skies. Ziwei the Great had manifested himself and descended upon this world to resolve the crisis. He had destroyed the menace that hovered above their heads. It was a threat that lasted for 28 whole years. Now it had finally dissipated. Thank you for your hard work through all these years, Yi Futian said with a smile. For 28 years, his consciousness had fused into the celestial skies, and his spiritual soul had also fused into the stars above. His life no longer just belonged to him. He actually saw everything inside the Ziwei Segmentum. As for everyone who arrived here, every word that they spoke, he heard all of it. He couldn't respond to them, but he saw all of it with his own eyes. Don't worry about it, Palace Lord. You've stopped the Imperial Arm, all by yourself to protect the Ziwei Segmentum. How can we be considered the ones who put in the hard work? Lord Chun said, for 28 years, I borrowed the will of the great emperor to block the Imperial Arm. But all of you were also working hard for the development of the Imperial Palace. Throughout the years, the Imperial Palace was continuously getting stronger. I saw it all. Yi Futian smiled at all of the familiar faces. Many of their cultivation levels had become stronger, and it wasn't by a small margin. Without looking at the others, his 4 students from the Four-Corner Village were all Pikrenhuang Plain today, no exceptions. And their cultivation levels were probably extremely stable, allowing them to try breaking through to the plain above Renhuang. The others were all similar. Everyone had improved. Compared to 28 years ago, this could be considered a metamorphosis. The overall strength and power of the Ziwei Imperial Palace were not even on the same level as it was before. Now, he was the only lagging behind. Palace Lord, please return to the Ziwei Imperial Palace, Lord Chen said. He wanted to invite Yi Futian back to Ziwei. Inside the imperial palace, there were still many others waiting for Yi Futian. No hurry, Yi Futian said, which caused a slightly astounded expression to appear on Lord Chen's face. He asked curiously, anything else that the palace lord wants to do? Well, actually not really, Yi Futian shook his head. It's just that none of you could communicate with me for the past 28 years. But actually, I have never stopped cultivating for the past 28 years, including the past few years. The awakening of the will of the great emperor this time is the result of my efforts in recent years. Now, I need to cultivate alone for some time to better see the changes that occurred within me. Lord Chen and the others' eyes all gleamed with excitement. Yi Futian's words were a pleasant surprise to them. He didn't waste the past 28 years either. He had been cultivating and improving himself as well. Since Yi Futian had asked to cultivate alone, that must mean that he had some sort of epiphany. Could it be? How powerful would Yi Futian be if he went one step further? They were all looking forward to it. You guys go back to the imperial palace first, Yi Futian said. Yes, palace lord. We'll prepare the banquet at the imperial palace and wait for you to come back and celebrate your return. Lord Chen smiled. Now that they had overcome the crisis, everyone felt rather happy and relaxed. All right, Yi Futian nodded. Lord Chen immediately brought the others with him and left the place. Master, please come back earlier to see us, little Ling called out to him. She was really looking forward to meeting her master and talking to him. But she didn't expect that Yi Futian would immediately get busy with cultivation. They had no other choice but to leave with Lord Chen and the others. Soon, everyone left the place, except for Hua Jiyu, who still accompanied Yi Futian. Let's go. The two exchanged glances then launched into the air. They actually went toward the outside of the Ziwei segmentum, entering the boundless void above it. Inside the boundless void, Yi Futian sat in a cross-legged stance and started to view himself internally. Inside his life palace, the world tree stood tall. There was only one tree in the entire world, but possessing this tree was like possessing everything in existence. It evolved into the sun, the moon, the stars, the wind, the water, and lightning, all inside the life palace. With a turn of his mind, it was as though the entirety of Yi Futian's being had turned into a divine tree. His body was the trunk of the divine tree. In this boundless void, the stars of the skies appeared. These celestial entities were like the fruits borne by the divine tree. The divine tree morphed into his path. It formed its own space and was capable of forming its own dominion. Furthermore, the power of this path was clearly stronger than before. Throughout these years, he had devoured the powers of the celestial stars and the power of the great path inside the heaven-tempering enumeration. He kept strengthening himself and had never stopped cultivating. A terrifying aura started to appear in the world around him. In the vast, boundless void, it seemed that it had suddenly been visited by waves of obliterating power. An expression of astonishment appeared on Yi Futian's face. He raised his head and looked at the sky and earth around him. Tribulation. He didn't break through his plane, but he had to overcome another tribulation. Hua Jiyu's pretty eyes looked toward Yi Futian, but she wasn't puzzled. She knew that since the first time Yi Futian overcame the tribulation back then, he had entered a different path from the rest. He was different from the other cultivators. He had always been at the Runhuang Plain and had never broken through it. That was the case back when he first overcame the divine tribulation of the Great Path. After he had overcome the tribulation, he was somehow still peak Runhuang level. Now, he actually instigated the second tribulation, and he still didn't show any sign of breaking through his current plane. He was still a Runhuang, but he was becoming more and more perfect and certainly stronger. Boom! Terrifying lights of the tribulation converged and arrived. Yi Futian stood that with divine lights circling his body, preparing himself to deal with another divine tribulation of the Great Path. His tribulation was different from the other powerful cultivators. However, it was time for another round of tempering of his divine body of the Great Path. Rewind to the time before Yi Futian faced another divine tribulation, FO the Great Path. Back when he broke open the seal of the Ziwei segmentum, and destroyed the Imperial Armed Divine Prefecture. At a palace inside the Tianyan City Lord's office, Wang Xiao, who was in the middle of cultivation, let out a muffled groan as his face turned pale. He seemed to have sensed something. He raised his head to look up above the sky. It was as though his gaze had pierced through the vast space, and he saw the obliteration of the Imperial arm. A terrifying pulsating aura erupted from him, and then his figure directly appeared in the air above the Tianyan City Lord's office. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. How could this happen? Blood seeped out from the corner of Wang Zhao's mouth, as an expression of utter disbelief appeared in his eyes. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. As the Tianyan City Lord thought about this, he felt calmer. The reason why he was so shocked before this was likely because it had happened too suddenly. He had thought that the Imperial arm was destroyed, but now that he was able to reorganize his thoughts, although it was indeed heartache that the Imperial arm was destroyed, they should still move forward. Yi Futian alone wouldn't be able to make that much of a difference. The cultivators of Tianyan City all managed to recover from the panic and become busy again, going back to their work. At the same time, they notified the various powers of the Divine Prefecture. Those powers that had participated in the besiegement back then were all shocked when they received the news. They all felt somewhat anxious, especially those powers that weren't ancient god clans, like the West Sea Domain and the Donghua Domain Chief's Manor. They could be described as completely defenseless before the power of the Ziwei Segmentum today. But the Ziwei Segmentum was sealed and isolated for 28 years, so they probably didn't grow much, right? Yi Futian overcame the tribulation in the boundless space outside of the Ziwei Segmentum. The tribulation lasted for a whole month, and only after that did he return to the Imperial Palace inside the Ziwei Segmentum. After he returned, the Ziwei Imperial Palace organized a banquet with the core members of the Ziwei Segmentum present to welcome Yi Futian's return. Breaking the seal, destroying the Imperial arm, and Yi Futian return. These were all incredible things that were worth celebrating and drinking for. On the banquet in the Ziwei Imperial Palace, Yi Futian sat at the central seat, while the Lord of the Heavenly Mandate Palace and the spouse of the Imperial Palace Lord, Hua Jiyu, sat beside him. The first seat to his left was occupied by Lord Chun, while to the right were the other three palace lords, Emperor Shi, Morong Yu Daoist Monk Mu. Then followed the deputy palace lords. Everyone was here to celebrate the occasion. Behind Yi Futian were the four young cultivators. Fang Xiyuan and the others stood there, serving their master. Although their cultivation levels were all very high, Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu were sitting right there. As students, they had to serve them. Come, let's first toast to the palace lord and his partner. The return of the palace lord this time was the greatest surprise to the Ziwei Semniatum, Lord Chun said as he raised his glass. Immediately, all of the cultivators raised their glasses and toasted to Yi Futian. Yi Futian and Hua Jiyu raised their glasses as well. He looked toward the Ziwei Segmentum cultivators and said, "After seeing all of you, I can tell that no one has stopped working hard for the past 28 years. Thank you to everyone here." Then, he drank all of the wine in his glass. Everyone else also followed and did and same before putting down their glasses. Morong Yu joked, "Palace Lord, there's one thing that you don't know." Chapter 2580. They are used to it. Chapter 2580. They are used to it. After the banquet, Yi Futian and other key figures visited the rest of the residents in Ziwei Imperial Palace. Now many new cultivators in the palace were impressed with Yi Futian and admired him a lot. Yi Futian was now a legend in the Ziwei Segmentum and the spokesperson of Ziwei the Great. Afterward, he paid a visit to his elders and family. Then, after discussing with Taoist monk Mu, he was ready to start another round of alchemy again. Just when Yi Futian was about to start, suddenly, his mind moved slightly, and he took out the treasure mirror. On the other side, Shi Qiao's face appeared. Shi Qiao had a smile on her face that made her seem even more beautiful than before. Her temperament was even more outstanding. When I heard the news that you had breached the Imperial arms, I called on you immediately. 28 years, I finally got in touch with you again. Shi Qiao smiled softly. It was as if she was seeing a long-lost friend with much joy in her heart. Has the West Imperial Palace already gotten the news? Yi Futian asked. Only Tianyan City should have known the news of him breaching the Imperial arms. This meant that Tianyan City had already allowed the news to spread. Such a big happy event. How could Tianyan City not share it with other forces in the Divine Prefecture? Shi Qiao teased and continued. However, you are too secretive. If it were not because I got the news from Tianyan City, would you plan to keep this news a secret from me? I just got out, and I was too busy cultivating. I also have a lot of things to deal with at Ziwei Imperial Palace. Now I plan to make some elixirs and retreat, so I didn't think to contact you. Yi Futian said. I saw some changes within you. Did you have a breakthrough? Look at you, Shi Qiao replied in awe. You could even see something like that. Yes, I did break through the shackles of Run Huang, and went one level higher. However, I am afraid that there is still quite a gap compared to you. You are continuing to make elixirs. Is it because you had another breakthrough in your cultivation? Fortunately, Yi Futian said. Speaking of alchemy, can you use the resources of the West Imperial Palace to help me collect some alchemical materials? The rarer the better. No problem, I'll do it now. When I have all of them, I will send them to the Ziwei Segmentum. Shi Qiao responded readily enough without any hesitation. Thanks. Yi Futian nodded, and the two ended their conversation. Although the two were not close friends, they worked well together and trusted each other. Yi Futian asked Shi Qiao to find alchemical materials, and she agreed right away. She knew that Yi Futian would not forget the West Imperial Palace's favor. Then Yi Futian began to make the elixirs and retreat. Although he was still in the realm of the Run Huang, he had experienced the divine tribulation twice already while in the Run Huang realm, and he had no idea if he could produce subdivine elixirs of the second tribulation. When he returned to the Ziwei Segmentum, after having survived the tribulation the first time, he could produce the subdivine elixirs of the first tribulation. He didn't lack any alchemical materials for the time being. He had gathered as much as he could back then on Elixir Emperor's Island, and obtained many precious medicinal materials, which had yet been used up. He wanted Shi Qiao to help him to collect these materials, so he had some in reserve. After all, there were more and more cultivators in the Ziwei Segmentum, and there were not enough elixirs to give to everyone. The Alchemy Palace, on the other hand, also required a lot of alchemical materials. If they go to the Divine Prefecture to collect them, it would potentially be a thorny situation. It was much easier to work with West Imperial Palace on the collection of materials. After he produced the elixirs, part of them would be sent over to West Imperial Palace. This way it was a win-win for both sides. This mutual relationship could ensure their continued cooperation. The secret to getting people to agree to help was never letting them get the short end of the stick. As long as both parties could benefit, the relationship would have no reason not to continue. In the cultivation world, feelings were a thing fragile to begin with. Not to mention that his relationship with the West Imperial Palace was not at the level where feelings would be a factor. The others in Ziwei Imperial Palace were also cultivating peacefully. After Yi Futian broke through the imprisonment of the Imperial arms and returned to them, these cultivators in Ziwei Imperial Palace seemed to be hopeful once again. They were more motivated to cultivate, as their palace lord was personally working on producing those elixirs that were highly anticipated. This time, Yi Futian first produced a large batch of top Renhuang elixirs. To him, this level of elixirs was far too easy for him, and its mass production did not require too much of his energy. However, the Run Huang elixirs that he produced were absolutely unparalleled in all of the Divine Prefecture, and their quality was perfection itself. For cultivators in the Run Huang realm, it had a massive effect, and could help them lay the most solid foundation for leveling up. After the batches were done, Yi Futian had Blind Tai and Old Ma distribute the elixirs, prioritizing top cultivators in the Runhuang realm, making preparations for the impact to experiencing the divine tribulation of the Great Path. After that, he continued to make higher-level elixirs, like the subdivine elixirs. For a long time after that, elixir tribulations were frequent occurrences and a common sight in the starry cultivation court. This strange sight piqued Qiqiao's curiosity. The reactions of these people didn't seem normal to her. This is divine tribulation, Qiqiao said to Futian. Futian nodded. Seeing his nonchalant expression, Qiqiao felt even more curious and asked, "Did none of the people at the Ziwei Imperial Palace care about that?" "They got used to it," Futian replied. "Got used to it?" Qiqiao stared at Futian incredulously with her beautiful eyes. These people got accustomed to seeing divine tribulations? As the goddess of West Imperial Palace, the entire West Imperial Palace attached great importance to her when she was experiencing the divine tribulation, and all the cultivators in the entire palace were observing her at the time. She cultivated many years before she experienced the divine tribulation, and the whole clan witnessed it. But now, someone was experiencing divine tribulation at Ziwei Imperial Palace. No one cared. "You are tough," Qiqiao said. "It seems that the elixirs are effective. Let's see what good elixir you have made this time." As soon as she said that, Qiqiao checked the elixirs that Futian gave her with great anticipation. Futian didn't mind it, merely turning his head to look higher into the sky. Soon, Qiqiao's body stiffened, and her heart trembled violently. Her beautiful eyes fixed on Futian. "Qia, what is it?" the cultivator from Western Imperial Palace asked. Qiqiao didn't seem to have heard them. After a while, she looked at the people from West Imperial Palace and took out an elixir. Second tribulation, subdivine elixir. When they heard what Qiqiao said, the eyes of all the cultivators from the West Imperial Palace were frozen as well. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.